Jake Morrison stood at the window of the transport ship, watching Earth grow smaller behind them. The blue marble that had been his home for 34 years was now just a dot among the stars. He touched the glass with his fingertips, wondering if he would ever see it again. First time leaving Earth? Asked Lisa Carter, settling into the seat beside him. She was younger than Jake, maybe 28, with short brown hair and bright green eyes that seemed to take in everything around her. Yeah, Jake said, still looking out the window. You? Second time. I went to Mars once for research. But this is different. Lisa pulled out a tablet and started reading. Very different. Jake knew what she meant. Mars was still in their solar system, still close to home. Where they were going now was so far away that Earth's sun would just be another star in the sky. 3 months ago, everything had changed. Giant ships had appeared over every major city on Earth, not to attack, but to talk. The aliens called themselves the Galactic Council. They said they had been watching humans for a long time, waiting to see if Earth's people were ready to join the larger community of space. But there was a problem. Earth was what they called a death world. Most planets in the galaxy were peaceful, places with gentle weather and few dangers. Earth was different. Earth had hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanoes, and wild animals that could kill. The aliens thought any species that survived on such a dangerous world must be dangerous themselves. So instead of a welcome party, Jake and Lisa were going to what sounded more like a trial. They had to prove that humans deserved to be part of the galactic community. Jake had been chosen because of his military background. He had served in the Marines for 12 years, then worked in diplomatic security. He knew how to handle tense situations and keep people safe. The government thought his experience would be useful. Lisa was there because she was a scientist who studied alien life. She had spent years preparing for first contact with other species. She understood biology and culture better than almost anyone on Earth. What do you think they'll be like? Jake asked, finally turning away from the window. Lisa looked up from her tablet. The aliens? Hard to say. We've only talked to a few of them through video calls. Most won't even do that. They seem scared of us. Scared? Why would they be scared of us? Because of where we come from. Think about it, Jake. Most of these aliens evolved on worlds where the biggest danger might be a gentle rainstorm. Earth has tornadoes that can destroy entire cities. We have predators that hunt in packs. We have diseases that can kill millions. To them, we're monsters just for surviving our own planet. Jake frowned. That doesn't make sense. We're not monsters. We help each other. We have art and music and poetry. We take care of sick people and animals. I know that. You know that. But they don't know that. All they see is a species that came from a world that would kill them in minutes. The transport ship's captain, an alien with 4 arms and silver skin, announced over the speaker that they would arrive at the council station in 2 hours. Jake felt his stomach tighten with nerves. What's the station like? He asked. Lisa pulled up some images on her tablet. It's huge, bigger than Earth's moon. It orbits a gas giant called Nexus Prime. Over 800 different species live and work there. It's like a city in space, but bigger than any city on Earth. Jake looked at the pictures. The station was shaped like a giant wheel, spinning slowly in space. Lights covered its surface like stars. Ships of all sizes moved around it like tiny insects. 800 species, Jake said quietly, and they all think we're dangerous. Not all of them. Some are just curious. Others are neutral. But yeah, a lot of them think we shouldn't be allowed to join the council. What happens if they decide we're too dangerous? Lisa was quiet for a moment. Best case? They leave us alone on Earth, but we can never join the galactic community. we'd be stuck in our solar system forever. And worst case, they make sure we can never become a threat to anyone. Jake understood. He had been in enough briefings to know what that meant. If the council decided humans were too dangerous, they might decide to eliminate the threat permanently. So no pressure, he said. With a weak smile, Lisa smiled back. None at all. The next 2 hours passed quickly. Jake tried to read the briefing materials they had been given, but it was hard to concentrate. Lists of alien species, their customs, their biology, their history with the council. There was too much to remember. Lisa seemed more relaxed. She had been studying this stuff for years. She knew the names of dozens of alien species and could pronounce them correctly. She understood their different ways of communicating and their cultural rules. Jake, she said as they began to approach the station, when we get there, let me do most of the talking at first. Some of these species communicate in ways that might seem rude to humans. Others might be offended by direct eye contact or certain gestures. I've studied their protocols. Good plan, Jake agreed. I'll follow your lead on the cultural stuff. But if things get dangerous, then you take over. I know. The station filled their view as they got closer. It was even bigger than Jake had imagined. He could see thousands of windows, docking bays, and strange structures he couldn't identify. Ships of every shape and size moved around it like a swarm of bees. Their transport was directed to a small docking bay on the outer rim. As they landed, Jake could feel the artificial gravity shift slightly. The station was spinning to create gravity, just like the space stations in old science fiction movies. A delegation was waiting for them when they stepped off the ship. 3 aliens, each completely different from the others. One looked like a tall, thin tree with eyes. Another was covered in fur and walked on 6 legs. The third was barely visible, more like a cloud of glowing gas than a solid being. A tree-like. Alien spoke first, its voice coming from a translator device. Welcome to Council Station. I am Ambassador Kethron of the Scythe. These are Ambassador Vexhai of the Turians and Ambassador Shimmer of Stars of the Ethereals. We will escort you to your quarters. Thank you, Lisa said carefully. We are honored to be here. The walk through the station was overwhelming. The corridors were huge, designed to accommodate species of all sizes. Some aliens were tiny, no bigger than cats. Others were massive, the size of elephants. They passed shops, restaurants, and meeting areas filled with beings Jake couldn't have imagined in his wildest dreams. But he noticed something else. As they walked, conversation stopped. Aliens stared at them, then quickly looked away. Some moved to the other side of the corridor to avoid getting too close. Others whispered to each other in languages the translators couldn't pick up. They're afraid of us, Jake said quietly to Lisa. I know, she whispered back. Stay calm. Don't make any sudden movements. Their quarters were comfortable, but clearly designed for species very different from humans. The beds were too soft, the lighting was too dim, and the air had a strange smell, but it would do. A council session begins tomorrow, Ambassador Kethran explained. You will have the opportunity to address the assembly and respond to any questions or concerns. After the aliens left, Jake and Lisa sat in their strange room, preparing for what might be the most important day in human history. Ready for this? Lisa asked. Jake checked his watch. Earth time said it was midnight, but the station never got dark. As ready as we'll ever be. Tomorrow, they would stand before 847 different species and try to convince them that humanity deserved a place among the stars. The future of their entire species depended on what happened in that room, no pressure at all. Jake woke up feeling like he had barely slept. The artificial day and night cycle on the station was different from Earth's, and his body was confused. Lisa was already awake, sitting at the small table with her tablet, reviewing notes. "Morning," she said without looking up. "Or whatever time it is here. How long until the session?" 2 hours. "I've been reading about the Council's history. Jake, this is bigger than we thought. They've never had to decide whether an entire species should be allowed to join before. Usually, species apply after they've been peaceful for thousands of years." Jake poured himself something that was supposed to be like coffee from the food dispenser. It tasted terrible. "What's different about us? We're the first species they've encountered that evolved on a Class 12 death world. Most Council species come from Class I or Class 2 worlds. Garden planets with gentle weather and no major predators. What makes Earth Class 12? Lisa turned her tablet to show him a chart. Natural disasters that can destroy continents. Weather systems that can kill thousands in hours. Predators that hunt other predators. Disease outbreaks that can end civilizations. Volcanic activity that can change the climate. And that's just the natural stuff. Earth also has resource scarcity that forces competition between species. But we survived all that. Doesn't that count for something? That's what we have to convince them of. But Jake, some of these species think we only survived by becoming more dangerous than our planet." An hour later, Ambassador Kethran arrived to escort them to the council chamber. As they walked through the corridors, Jake noticed even more stairs than yesterday. Word had spread that the Deathworlders were about to address the council. The council chamber was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. It was enormous, shaped like a bowl with seats rising up in circles toward the ceiling. Each section was designed for different types of beings, some filled with water for aquatic species, others with different atmospheric conditions, some with artificial gravity fields pointing in different directions. At the center was a small platform where Jake and Lisa would stand. As they walked toward it, Jake tried to count the aliens watching them, but gave up. There had to be thousands of representatives from the 847 species. At the highest point in the chamber sat the High Arbiter, a being that looked like it was made of living crystal. Its voice echoed through the chamber, without need for translation. "We are gathered to consider the application of the species, known as humans, for membership in the Galactic Council. This is an unprecedented situation, as no species from a Class 12 death world has ever sought membership before." Jake felt his heart beating fast. Lisa looked calm, but he could see her hands shaking slightly. "Before we hear from the human representatives, the Council will present the concerns that have been raised regarding their species." A section of the chamber lit up, and a new voice spoke. This one came through the translators. "I am Speaker Jethmer of the Peaceful Coalition. We represent 312 species who have concerns about admitting humans to the Council." Jake and Lisa exchanged glances. 312 species out of 847. That was more than a third of the Council already against them. Speaker Jethmer continued. "Our first concern is the nature of the human homeworld. Earth is classified as Class 12 due to extreme environmental dangers. These include weather systems capable of destroying large areas, geological instability that can eliminate entire regions, and predatory species that actively hunt other life forms." Images appeared on screens around the chamber. Hurricane footage, earthquake damage, volcanic eruptions. Then came pictures of lions hunting, sharks attacking, humans in combat. Any species that evolved on such a world must have developed extreme survival traits. These traits make them inherently dangerous to peaceful species. Murmurs filled the chamber. Jake could hear fear in some of the alien voices, even through the translators. "Our second concern is human history. Our observations show that humans have been in a state of almost constant warfare for their entire recorded history. They have developed weapons capable of destroying their own planet. They have created systems of government based on conflict. and competition rather than cooperation. More images flashed on the screens. Wars, weapons, destruction. Jake wanted to object, to explain that these images didn't show the whole story, but this wasn't the time. Our third concern is human biology. Humans are persistence predators. They can track prey for days without stopping. They can survive injuries that would kill most galactic species. They can adapt to environmental conditions that would be fatal to others. They show little fear in situations that could paralyze other beings. Our final concern is human psychology. Humans form pack bonds that make them extremely dangerous when threatened. They will sacrifice themselves for their pack members. They show aggression when protecting their territory or their young. They have a concept called righteous anger that can drive them to extreme violence when they believe they are fighting for a just cause. Speaker Jethmer paused, letting the words sink in. For these reasons, the Peaceful Coalition believes that humans should not be granted membership in the Council. Instead, we propose they be placed under protective quarantine for the safety of all galactic species. The chamber erupted in noise. Some species were clearly agreeing with the Coalition. Others seemed to be arguing. Jake couldn't understand most of what was being said, but the emotion was clear. The High Arbiter called for order. The Peaceful Coalition has presented their concerns. Are there other voices who wish to speak before we hear from the human representatives? Another section lit up. I am Warrior Prime Thekra of the Honor Guard Alliance. We represent 47 species who have different concerns. Jake felt a small bit of hope. Maybe not everyone was against them. We do not fear humans because they are dangerous. We fear them because they may be too dangerous. A species that has survived a Class 12 world may possess capabilities that could threaten the balance of power in the galaxy. What if they decide the Council is not worth joining? What if they choose to take what they want by force? The hope died quickly. The Honor Guard Alliance wasn't supporting humans either. They were just afraid for different reasons. We propose that humans be allowed to join the Council, but only after demonstrating that they can be controlled. They should accept monitoring of their homeworld and limits on their expansion into space. More arguing filled the chamber. Lisa leaned close to Jake. This is worse than we expected, she whispered. They're not just afraid of us. They're terrified. Third section lit up. I am Scholar Prime Vethlan of the Knowledge Seekers. We represent 91 species who find this debate premature. Jake held his breath. How can we judge an entire species based on incomplete information? We have observed humans from a distance, but we have never interacted with them directly. We have seen their capacity for conflict, but have we seen their capacity for peace? We have witnessed their survival instincts, but have we witnessed their compassion? This was better. Jake felt some of his tension ease. We propose that judgment be postponed until we can conduct proper studies of human society and psychology. Send observers to Earth. Establish cultural exchange programs. Learn who humans really are before deciding their fate. But the fourth section that lit up quickly crushed that hope too. I am Hive Queen, Zareth of the Collective Mind. We represent 138 species who believe delay is dangerous. Every day we wait is another day for humans to advance their technology and expand their capabilities. They have already achieved interstellar travel in less time than most species take to develop basic agriculture. The Queen's voice had a buzzing quality that made Jake's teeth itch. Humans are not just dangerous because of their world or their history. They are dangerous because they advance too quickly. In the time it has taken us to debate their application, they have built new ships, developed new technologies, and spread to other planets in their system. We propose immediate action. Either accept them now with severe restrictions or reject them completely. But do not give them more time to become an even greater threat. The chamber fell silent. Jake could feel hundreds of alien eyes watching him and Lisa, the weight of their entire species' future pressed down on his shoulders. The High Arbiter spoke again. The Council has heard the concerns of 4 major coalitions. The Peaceful Coalition proposes quarantine. The Honor Guard Alliance proposes controlled membership. The Knowledge Seekers propose delayed judgment pending further study. The Collective Mind proposes immediate decision, either acceptance with restrictions or complete rejection. The Crystal Being's voice seemed to echo from everywhere at once. Before we vote on these proposals, we will hear from the human representatives. They will have the opportunity to address our concerns and present their case for membership. Jake and Lisa stood up. This was it. Everything they said in the next few minutes would determine whether humanity joined the galactic community or remained forever isolated. Or worse, Jake looked out at the sea of alien faces. Some showed obvious fear. Others showed curiosity. Few showed what might have been hostility. All of them were waiting to hear what the 2 Deathworlders had to say for themselves. Lisa stepped forward first. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," she began, her voice steady despite the impossible pressure. "We come before you today, not as conquerors or threats, but as a species seeking to learn from and contribute to the larger galactic community." Jake stood beside her, ready to support whatever approach she took. They had prepared for this moment, but no amount of preparation could have readied them for the reality of standing before 847 different species, most of whom saw them as monsters. The future of humanity rested on their next words. Lisa's voice carried clearly through the massive chamber as she began their defense. Jake stood beside her, watching the faces of hundreds of different species, trying to read their reactions. "You have heard many concerns about humanity today," Lisa said. "You have been told that we are dangerous because of where we come from. You have been shown images of our conflicts and our struggles. But I ask you to consider this. What do you see? As dangerous, we see as the source of our greatest strengths." She gestured to one of the screens that still showed images of Earth's natural disasters. "Yes, our world has terrible storms. But those storms taught us to build stronger homes and to work together when disaster strikes. When a hurricane hits a human city, people don't run away and leave others to die. They stay and help. They rescue strangers from floods. They share food with neighbors they've never met." Jake saw some of the aliens leaning forward, listening more carefully. "You showed us images of earthquakes destroying our cities. But you didn't show what happens next. Humans from around the world send help. They donate money to people they will never meet. They travel thousands of miles to dig survivors out of rubble. Our planet may be dangerous, but it taught us that we must take care of each other." Lisa walked slowly across the platform, making eye contact with different sections of the chamber. "You say we are persistence predators, and that this makes us dangerous. But do you know what humans use this ability for most often today? We use it to find missing children. We use it to track down criminals who hurt innocent people. We use it to search for survivors after disasters." The chamber was quieter now. Even the species that had been talking among themselves were listening. "You mentioned our pack bonds and said they make us dangerous. But these same bonds are why human soldiers will risk their lives to save wounded enemies. Why human doctors will work for days without sleep to save patients. Why human parents will sacrifice everything for their children, even children who are not biologically theirs." Lisa paused and looked directly at Speaker Jethmer of the Peaceful Coalition. "You say our history is full of war, and you are right. But you only looked at half the story. Yes, we have fought wars. But we have also ended wars. We have groups dedicated to preventing conflict. We have laws that protect prisoners of war. We have people who risk their lives to help refugees from conflicts they had nothing to do with." She turned to address another section. You worry about our technology advancing too quickly. But human technology isn't just about weapons. We use our advancing knowledge to cure diseases, to feed hungry people, to explore space peacefully. We have international treaties that limit the use of our most dangerous weapons. We have scientists who refuse to work on projects that could harm innocent people. Jake could see that Lisa was connecting with some of the aliens, but others still looked skeptical. The collective mind section was buzzing with what sounded like disagreement. Lisa seemed to sense this too. She changed her approach. Let me tell you about something that happened on Earth just 50 years ago. There was a nuclear accident at a power plant. The situation was extremely dangerous. Radiation was leaking that could have killed millions of people. She had the chamber's complete attention now. 3 human engineers volunteered to go into the damaged reactor to stop the leak. They knew it would probably kill them. They had families, children, futures ahead of them. But they went anyway, because millions of strangers needed them. Jake remembered this story from the briefing materials. All 3 men had died from radiation exposure, but they had prevented a disaster that could have made a huge area of Earth uninhabitable. Those men didn't have to make that choice. They could have evacuated with everyone else. But they stayed, because that's what humans do. We don't abandon others when things get dangerous. We run toward danger to help people, not away from it. The chamber was completely silent now. Even the hostile sections had stopped their conversations. You call us Deathworlders as if it's something shameful. But being from a death world didn't make us monsters. It made us protectors. It made us healers. It made us problem solvers. When other species encounter something they can't handle, we want to be the ones they call for help, not the ones they fear. Lisa stepped back, and Jake knew it was his turn. He had never been comfortable with public speaking, but this was too important to worry about his nerves. My name is Jake Morrison, he began. I spent 12 years as a soldier in the human military. I know that frightens some of you, but let me tell you what human soldiers really do. He looked around the chamber, meeting as many eyes as he could. Yes, we train to fight, but we also train to protect. We have rules about how we fight. We have laws about protecting civilians. We have codes of honor about treating prisoners with respect. Jake thought about his own experiences, the missions that had meant the most to him. I remember a mission where we were sent to evacuate people from a war zone. Not soldiers, families. Old people, children, sick people who couldn't evacuate themselves. We went into dangerous territory not to fight, but to carry babies to safety. He paused, letting that image sink in. I remember another mission where we were delivering medical supplies to a remote area. Our convoy was attacked, and we had to choose between defending ourselves and protecting the medicine. We chose to protect the medicine, even though it put us at greater risk. The Honor Guard Alliance section seemed to be paying close attention. Jake addressed them directly. You worry that humans might be too dangerous, that we might take what we want by force. But human military doctrine is based on something we call proportional response. We only use as much force as necessary to solve a problem. We have rules about when force can be used and when it cannot. He turned to address the broader chamber. Human soldiers don't fight because we love violence. We fight to protect people who cannot protect themselves. And when the fighting is over, human soldiers help rebuild. We help former enemies become friends. We teach children in schools. We build hospitals and roads. Jake could see that some aliens were nodding, but others still looked unconvinced. A peaceful coalition section was especially quiet, not showing any reaction. You've heard about human pack bonds, Jake continued, but let me tell you how they really work. In human military units, we have a saying, no one gets left behind. That doesn't just mean our own people. I've seen human soldiers risk their lives to save enemy wounded. I've seen them share their food with prisoners. I've seen them adopt orphan children from countries they were supposed to be fighting against. Jake walked to the other side of the platform, addressing different sections of the chamber. You say humans show little fear in dangerous situations. That's not exactly right. We feel fear just like anyone else. But we've learned that sometimes you have to do the right thing, even when you're afraid. Fear doesn't make the choice for us. He thought about the decision to come to this station, to stand before these aliens who saw him as a monster. I'm afraid right now. I'm afraid you'll decide that humanity is too dangerous to exist. But I'm here anyway, because some things are more important than fear. The chamber was so quiet Jake could hear the hum of the station's machinery. He looked up at the High Arbiter. You want to know if humans can be trusted with membership in the galactic community. Let me ask you this. If another species was in danger, if they needed help from someone who wasn't afraid of dangerous situations, who would you rather call? A species that runs from danger, or a species that runs toward it to help others? Jake stepped back next to Lisa. They had said everything they could think of to say. Now they had to wait and see if it was enough. The High Arbiter's crystal form seemed to pulse with light. The human representatives have presented their defense. Before we proceed to vote, are there any questions from the council? Immediately, dozens of sections lit up, indicating they wanted to speak. Jake's heart sank. Questions usually meant doubt. The first question came from a species Jake didn't recognize, something that looked like a giant butterfly with too many wings. If humans are so peaceful, why do you still maintain military forces? Why not eliminate all weapons and armies? Lisa answered first. Because peace has to be protected. There are still humans who choose to do evil things. There are still situations where innocent people need defenders. We maintain military forces the same way you maintain police forces, not because we want to use them, but because sometimes you need someone willing to stand between innocent people and those who would hurt them. The next question came from the collective mind section. How can we trust that humans won't use their dangerous capabilities against council species? Jake answered this one. The same way you trust any other species. By watching what we do, not just what we're capable of doing. Humans have the capability to destroy our own planet, but we choose not to. We have the capability to wage constant war, but we choose to pursue peace. We have the capability to take what we want by force, but we choose to trade and cooperate instead. More questions came, each one testing different aspects of human nature and society. Some were hostile, clearly looking for reasons to reject humanity's application. Others seemed genuinely curious, seeking to understand rather than condemn. After an hour of questions, the High Arbiter called for an end to the inquiry phase. The Council has heard the human defense and has had the opportunity to question the representatives. We will now break for deliberation before voting on the proposals before us. As Jake and Lisa were escorted back to their quarters, Jake could hear the chamber erupting in discussion behind them. Hundreds of different languages, all debating the fate of humanity. How do you think we did? Jake asked as they walked through the corridors. Hard to say, Lisa replied. Some of them seemed to be listening, but others looked like they had made up their minds before we even started talking. Back in their quarters, they could only wait. The deliberation could take hours or days. Somewhere, in that massive chamber, 847 different species were deciding whether humanity deserved a place among the stars, or would be forever isolated from the galactic community. Jake sat by the window, looking out at the stars. Each one might have planets with intelligent life. Each one might have been home to species that were now part of the Council. For the first time in human history, Earth wasn't alone in the universe. But whether they would be welcomed or rejected remained to be seen. All they could do now was wait. Jake had been pacing their quarters for 3 hours when Lisa finally looked up from her tablet and said, Sit down. You're making me nervous. How can you be so calm? Jake asked, but he sat down anyway. They're deciding the fate of our entire species in there. Worrying won't change their decision, Lisa said. And besides, I'm not calm. I'm terrified. I'm just better at hiding it. Before Jake could respond, alarms started blaring throughout the station. Red lights flashed in their quarters, and an automated voice began speaking in what sounded like dozens of different languages that Jake was on his feet immediately, his military training kicking in. What's happening? Lisa was checking her tablet, trying to access the station's information systems. I can't tell. The translation is coming through broken. Something about structural failure and evacuation procedures. The alarms got louder, and Jake could hear sounds from the corridor outside their quarters. Alien voices, some panicked, some trying to give orders. The sound of many feet running past their door. We need to get out there, Jake said, heading for the door. Wait, Lisa grabbed his arm. We don't know what's happening, and we're not exactly welcome here. Maybe we should stay put until someone comes for us. As if summoned by her words, their door chimed. Jake opened it to find Ambassador Kethron, the tree-like alien who had greeted them when they arrived. The alien's usual calm demeanor was gone, replaced by obvious distress. Humans, Kethron said, the translator making his voice sound strained. You must come immediately. There has been a catastrophic failure in the station's gravity generation system. We are evacuating all non-essential personnel. What can we do to help? Jake asked automatically. Kethran paused, clearly not expecting that response. Help? You should be evacuating to the emergency ships, like everyone else. We're not everyone else, Lisa said, grabbing her equipment bag. We're from a death world. Remember? We don't run from disasters. We help fix them. As they followed Kethron through the corridors, Jake could see the full scope of the crisis. Aliens of every description were fleeing toward the evacuation bays. Many looked panicked, completely overwhelmed by the emergency. Others were trying to maintain order, but it was clear that most council species had little experience with major disasters. The corridors were chaos. Some aliens moved too slowly, blocking the paths for others. Some were carrying too much luggage, slowing down the evacuation. Others had simply frozen in place, paralyzed by fear. Jake's training took over. He began directing traffic, using hand signals and simple commands to organize the flow of people, even though they couldn't understand. His words, his calm authority seemed to help some of the aliens focus. Lisa was doing something different. She was stopping to help aliens who were having trouble moving. An aquatic species whose breathing apparatus had been damaged in the panic. An elderly alien who had fallen and couldn't get up. A family group that had been separated and was crying out for each other. This way, Kethron called, leading them toward a different section of the station. The Emergency Command Center is asking for anyone with disaster response experience. The command center was in chaos, too. Dozens of different species were trying to coordinate the evacuation, but they were clearly overwhelmed. Multiple conversations in different languages were happening at once. Information displays showed confusing readings that no one seemed able to interpret properly. A crystalline being that looked similar to the High Arbiter was at the center of the chaos, trying to coordinate responses. When Kethran brought Jake and Lisa over, the being looked surprised. The Deathworlders? Why are they here? They should be evacuating. They offered to help, Kethran said. The crystalline being made a sound that the translator rendered as frustrated. Clicking. This is not the time for political gestures. We have a real crisis. What's the situation? Lisa asked, ignoring the dismissive tone. 3 of the primary gravity generators have failed simultaneously. The station structure cannot handle the stress. We estimate 47 minutes before catastrophic structural collapse. Jake studied the displays showing the station's layout. How many people are still on board? Approximately 112,000 beings from various species. We have evacuation capacity for perhaps 60,000. The math was simple and terrible. At least 50,000 beings were going to die unless they could solve this problem. What caused the generators to fail? Lisa asked. Unknown. The systems were operating normally, then all three failed within seconds of each other. Jake was studying the technical displays, trying to understand the station's layout. His engineering training was limited, but he had worked with damaged structures before. These generators, are they physically connected? Yes, they share power and control systems for efficiency. Then this wasn't three separate failures. Something affected all three at once. A cascade failure through the shared systems. The crystalline being looked at him with what might have been surprise. You understand our technology? Not your technology specifically, but I understand system failures. If you can isolate the generators from each other and restart them one at a time, you might be able to prevent the cascade from recurring. Impossible. The generators are located in the station's core, in areas with lethal radiation and gravity fluctuations. No being can survive there long enough to perform manual repairs. How long would it take? Jake asked. Even if someone could survive the environment, the repair process would require at least 20 minutes per generator, 60 minutes total. Jake and Lisa looked at each other. They both understood what that meant. The station would collapse in 47 minutes, but the repairs would take 60. What about remote repair systems? Lisa asked. Damaged in the initial failure. Manual intervention is the only option. Jake was already moving toward the equipment. Lockers along the wall. What kind of protective gear do you have? The crystalline being made more clicking sounds. Did you not understand? The environment is lethal. The radiation alone would kill most species in minutes. The gravity fluctuations would tear apart anyone not properly adapted. Most species aren't from Deathworlds, Lisa said, joining Jake at the equipment lockers. Jake, remember the briefings about human radiation resistance? Jake nodded. Humans could survive much higher radiation levels than most galactic species, thanks to Earth's history of mass extinction events and cosmic radiation exposure. They weren't immune, but they had much higher tolerance. And the gravity fluctuations? Jake asked. Human inner ear structure is more adaptable than most species. We evolved dealing with earthquakes and rapidly changing environments. The command center had gone quiet. Every alien in the room was staring at the two humans, who were calmly discussing walking into an environment that would kill anyone else. You cannot be serious, the crystalline being said. Even if you could survive the environment, you do not know our technology. Then you'll have to teach us, Lisa said, pulling on a protective suit that was designed for a completely different body. Type. How hard can it be? You said manual intervention. That means pressing buttons and turning valves, right? The procedures are complex. One mistake could make the situation worse. Jake was testing the communication system in his suit. Then don't. Let us make mistakes. Guide us through it step by step. An alien with multiple arms and what looked like computer interfaces built into its body stepped forward. I am Chief Engineer Vexhai. I designed these systems. I can guide you through the procedures remotely. The crystalline commander looked around the room at the dozens of species represented. All of them were clearly terrified by the situation, none of them able to help. Finally, its gaze settled back on Jake and Lisa. This is madness. You will die, and the station will still be destroyed. Maybe, Jake said, sealing his helmet. But if we don't try, everyone dies for sure. At least this way, some people might live. Lisa was checking her equipment one more time. How many evacuation ships have launched so far? 37 ships carrying approximately 48,000 beings. That leaves about 64,000 still on board, Jake calculated. If we can buy them time to evacuate, even if the station is lost, most people will live. The journey to the station's core took them through areas Jake had never seen before. Maintenance tunnels, engineering spaces, and finally into the heart of the massive structure. As they got closer to the gravity generators, Jake could feel the wrongness in the air. His suit's radiation detectors were climbing steadily. Radiation levels are entering dangerous zones. Engineer Vexhi's voice crackled through their communication system. Most species would be experiencing severe tissue damage by now. We're feeling it, Lisa reported, but we're still functional. The gravity fluctuations were worse than the radiation. One moment Jake felt normal. The next he felt like he weighed 3 times his normal weight. Then suddenly he was floating. It was disorienting and nauseating, but he had experienced similar sensations during emergency spacecraft training. First, generator chamber ahead, Vexhi reported. The access panel should be visible on your right. Jake saw it, a section of wall covered with alien symbols and what looked like control interfaces. I see it. What do I do? First, you must isolate the power coupling. Look for a crystalline cylinder approximately 2 meters tall. It took Jake several minutes to identify the right component among the dozens of alien devices in the chamber. When he found it, Vexhi guided him through the isolation process step by step. Meanwhile, Lisa was working in the second generator chamber. Her scientific background helped her understand the alien technology faster than Jake, but the environment was taking its toll on both of them. Radiation exposure is getting serious, Lisa reported, her voice strained. How much longer? Generator 1 is isolated, Jake reported. Beginning restart sequence. Generator 2 isolated, Lisa called. Jake, the evacuation status? Vexhi's voice came through their communicators. 51 ships have launched. Approximately 58,000 beings evacuated. 13,000 still on board. Jake's hands were shaking as he worked through the restart procedure. The radiation was affecting his nervous system, and the gravity fluctuations kept throwing him against walls and equipment. But the generator was responding. Generator 1 is online and stable, he reported. Generator 2 online, Lisa called. Moving to Generator 3. The third generator was the worst. It was deeper in the station's core, where the radiation was strongest and the gravity fluctuations most severe. Jake reached it first. Since Lisa's chamber had been more complex, the damage here was worse than the others. Several components had been physically destroyed by the power surge that started the cascade failure. Vexhi, some of these components are destroyed. Can the generator work without them? There was a pause. Negative. Those components are essential. Without them, the generator cannot function. Jake stared at the damaged equipment. They had come so far, saved 2 of the 3 generators, bought time for most of the evacuation. But without the third generator, the station would still collapse. Wait, Lisa's voice came through the communicator. Jake, what if we don't repair the third generator? What if we use it as a controlled failure point? Explain, Vexhi said. If we can program the third generator to fail in a specific way, we might be able to direct the structural stress to parts of the station that are already evacuated. Controlled demolition instead of random collapse. Jake understood immediately, like bringing down a damaged building. You don't try to save the whole thing. You decide which parts to sacrifice to save the important parts. Theoretically possible. Vexhi said slowly, but extremely dangerous. If the calculations are wrong, you could make the collapse faster and more destructive. How long do we have? Jake asked. Station-wide structural failure estimated in 8 minutes. 8 minutes to either repair the impossible or attempt a controlled destruction that could save thousands of lives or kill them all. Jake and Lisa looked at each other through their helmet displays. They were both showing severe radiation exposure, exhaustion, and system stress. But they were still thinking clearly. Controlled failure, they said at the same time, not working together. With Vex High's guidance, they began the delicate process of programming the third generator to fail inexactly, the right way at exactly the right time. It was like defusing a bomb while setting off a bigger explosion. Evacuation status? Lisa asked as she worked. 63 ships launched, approximately 9,000 beings still on board. Time remaining? 4 minutes to structural failure. Jake's hands were barely responding now, the radiation having damaged his nervous system. But he kept working, making the final connections for their controlled failure system. Programming complete, Lisa reported. Initiating controlled failure sequence. All beings, this is emergency command, came an announcement over the stations. Communication system. Final evacuation ships launching in 60 seconds. All remaining personnel to emergency stations. Jake and Lisa looked around the generator chamber. They were deep in the station's core, far from any evacuation route. Even if they ran now, they wouldn't make it to the ships in time. Well, Jake said, at least we know the evacuation worked. Jake, Lisa, Vex High's voice came through there. Communicators. There is an emergency transport pod in Chamber 7, just 2 levels up from your position. It was intended for generator maintenance. It should be able to reach the outer dock in time. They ran through corridors that were already buckling from structural stress, up maintenance shafts, while gravity fluctuated wildly around them. Their radiation-damaged bodies were failing, but they kept moving. The transport pod was tiny, designed for 1 small alien technician, not 2 humans in bulky protective suits. But they squeezed inside and launched just as the controlled failure. Sequence activated through the pod's small window. Jake watched sections of the massive station collapse in a carefully choreographed sequence. Parts that had been evacuated folded inward, absorbing the destructive energy and protecting the sections where beings might still be sheltering. Their pod reached the outer dock just as the final evacuation ships were launching. Automated systems grabbed their tiny craft and pulled it into the cargo bay of the last ship as it accelerated away from the dying station. Jake and Lisa lay in their cramped pod, too exhausted and radiation sick to move, watching through the window as the station completed its controlled collapse. What had been a structure larger than Earth's moon was now a cloud of debris around the gas giant, but they could see the lights of dozens of evacuation ships, carrying nearly 100,000 survivors to safety. Think they'll remember this when they vote on humanity's membership? Lisa asked weakly. Jake managed a weak smile. I don't think they'll be voting the same way they were before. Jake woke up in what was clearly a medical facility. The ceiling was too white, the air smelled like antiseptic, and there were too many beeping machines around his bed. He tried to sit up and immediately regretted it as pain shot through his entire body. Easy there, a familiar voice said. Lisa was in the bed next to him, looking almost as bad as he felt. Her skin had a grayish tint, and her hair was falling out in patches. Radiation sickness. The doctors say we're going to live, but we're going to feel terrible for a while. How long have we been here? 3 days. They had to transfer us to a medical ship with equipment that could treat radiation exposure. Most council species don't have much experience with that kind of injury. Jake looked around the medical bay. It was clearly designed for many different types of beings. Some beds were filled with water for aquatic species. Others had different atmospheric conditions. But most of the beds were empty. Where are we? Emergency Medical Ship Sanctuary. They're treating survivors from the station. Lisa's voice was hoarse. Jake, We saved them. Almost everyone made it off the station before it collapsed. A door slid open, and several aliens entered. Jake recognized Ambassador Catherine and Engineer Vexhai, but there were others he hadn't seen before. They approached the beds carefully, as if they weren't sure they were welcome. Humans Jake Morrison and Lisa Carter, Catherine said formally. The Galactic Council Emergency Response Committee has come to thank you for your actions during the station crisis. Jake tried to sit up again, more carefully this time. How many? How? Many what? Asked one of the new aliens, a being that looked like it was made of flowing metal. How many people died? The aliens exchanged glances. Vexhai spoke first. 47 beings were lost during the initial evacuation. They were trapped in sections that collapsed before the controlled failure sequence began. Without your intervention, the estimated casualty count would have been over 60,000. Lisa closed her eyes. 47 people died, and we're being thanked. You saved 59,953 lives, the metallic alien said firmly. Do not diminish that achievement by focusing on the losses you could not prevent. Another alien stepped forward, this one covered in what looked like crystalline scales. I am Medical Director Shekara. I have been treating the survivors of the station collapse. Many of them have asked specifically about the 2 Deathworlders who saved them. We just did what needed to be done, Jake said. That is precisely the point, Shekara replied. When faced with a lethal environment that would have killed any other being in minutes, you did not hesitate. When told the mission was impossible, you found a way to make it possible. When given a choice between your own safety and the lives of strangers, you chose strangers. Catherine moved closer to Jake's bed. There is something you should know. The council session to vote on humanity's membership has been postponed indefinitely. Jake's heart sank. After everything they had been through, the council was still going to reject humanity. Not because of doubt as species, Catherine continued quickly, seeing Jake's expression. Because the composition of the council has changed dramatically. What do you mean? Lisa asked. The metallic alien answered. 312 species represented in the peaceful coalition have requested to withdraw their opposition to human membership. 138 species from the collective mind have done the same. The Honor Guard Alliance has not only withdrawn their concerns, but has formally requested that humanity be offered a leadership position in galactic emergency response. Jake couldn't process what he was hearing, but they were terrified of us. They thought we were monsters. They were terrified of what they imagined you might do, Engineer Vexhai said. But they saw what you actually did. When faced with a crisis, you ran toward danger to help others. When told the situation was hopeless, you found hope. When everyone else was focused on escape, you were focused on rescue. Medical Director Shekara pulled up a display showing footage from the station collapse. This is security video from the evacuation corridors. Watch what the humans do differently from everyone else. The video showed the chaos Jake remembered. Aliens fleeing toward evacuation ships, panic, confusion. But from this outside perspective, Jake could see what he had missed at the time. While most beings were focused on their own escape, he and Lisa were constantly stopping to help others, directing traffic, assisting the injured, reuniting separated families. Every species in the galaxy evolved survival instincts, Shekara explained. But most species evolved on worlds where survival meant avoiding danger. Your species evolved on a world where survival sometimes meant embracing danger to protect others. Another video showed the evacuation ships after they had reached safety. Jake could see aliens of dozens of different species, all survivors because of the extra time the controlled station collapse had bought them. The preliminary vote count is already complete, Catherine said. 831 species now support full human membership in the Council. 16 species abstained pending further information. 0 species oppose membership. 0? Lisa asked weakly. The species that opposed human membership before the crisis have seen the evidence of what humans actually do in emergencies. They no longer view your species as a threat to galactic peace. They view you as guardians of galactic peace. Jake lay back in his medical bed, overwhelmed. 3 days ago, most of the galaxy had been convinced that humans were dangerous monsters. Now they wanted humanity to help protect them. There's more, the metallic alien said. The High Arbiter has requested a personal meeting with both of you as soon as you are medically cleared. The Council wants to offer humanity more than simple membership. What kind of offer? Jake asked. The Galactic Emergency Response Course has never had a command structure that included Deathworld species. The Council believes this was a serious oversight. They want to establish a new division specifically for disaster response and crisis management, with humanity taking a leadership role. Lisa laughed, though it turned into a cough. They want us to be the galaxy's emergency responders? Think about it logically, Engineer Vexhai said. When the next major crisis occurs, and there will be a next crisis, who would you rather have responding? A species that evacuates when things get dangerous, or a species that stays to help? Jake thought about all the human emergency responders he had known. Firefighters who ran into burning buildings. Doctors who went to disaster zones. Search and rescue teams who worked in conditions that would kill most people. Coast Guard crews who sailed into hurricanes to save strangers. There are a lot of humans who would be good at that kind of work, he admitted. The Council believes so too. They want to establish training facilities on Deathworlds, starting with Earth, where other species can learn crisis response from beings who evolved dealing with constant emergencies. Medical Director Shekara checked the readings on their monitors. You should rest now. The radiation exposure will take several more days to fully clear your systems. But I wanted you to know there are beings from 47 different species currently serving as medical volunteers on this ship, all of whom asked specifically to help treat the humans who saved their lives. After the aliens left, Jake and Lisa lay in their medical beds, trying to process everything that had happened. We came here expecting to be put on trial, Lisa said quietly. Instead, we became the galaxy's emergency responders, Jake replied. Think we can handle it? Jake thought about the responsibility. Hundreds of species across the galaxy, all looking to humanity for help when disaster struck. It was an enormous trust. But he also thought about the humans he knew. People who became firefighters and paramedics and search and rescue workers, not because it was easy, but because someone had to do it. People who trained for years to run toward danger when everyone else was running away. Yeah, he said. I think we can handle it. 2 weeks later, Jake and Lisa stood once again in the Galactic Council chamber. But this time, the massive amphitheater was filled with a very different kind of energy. Instead of fear and suspicion, there was respect and gratitude. The High Arbiter's crystal form, pulsed with what Jake had learned, was the equivalent of pleasure. The Galactic Council formally welcomes humanity as a full member species, with all rights and privileges thereof. The chamber erupted in what could only be described as applause, though it came in dozens of different forms from dozens of different species. Furthermore, the High Arbiter continued, humanity is hereby granted authority to establish the Galactic Emergency Response Course, with Earth designated as the primary training facility for crisis response specialists from all member species. Jake looked out at the sea of alien faces that had once viewed him as a monster. Now they were looking at him with something he had never expected to see from beings who came from peaceful worlds. Hope. The council session is concluded, the High Arbiter announced. Welcome to the galactic community, humanity. We have been waiting for you longer than we knew. As they walked out of the chamber, Lisa nudged Jake's arm. "Think our grandchildren will believe this story?" Jake smiled, watching aliens from species he couldn't even identify nodding respectfully as they passed. "I'm not sure I believe it myself." But as they walked through the corridors of the new council station, built with human-designed emergency systems and staffed with human-trained crisis response teams, Jake realized that sometimes the most unbelievable stories were the most true. Humanity had come to the stars expecting to be judged. Instead, they had found their purpose, to be the ones who stayed when everyone else had to leave, who ran toward danger when everyone else ran away, who turned disasters into rescues and chaos into hope. It wasn't the future anyone had imagined, but it was exactly the future the galaxy needed.